Okay, thank you all for staying, and welcome anyone who is just joining us today. This is going to be a second reading of um, the only story that I have this week. Um, so, um, Without any further ado, let's get into it. This one is entitled The Love's Story. It was 2 years ago that I met the love of my life. Her hair was a golden color, richer than the wheat in the fields. Her eyes were gems that sparkled in the midday sun. She was the sweetest woman I had ever met, but I decided to leave her when the guild needed my help clearing a dungeon. The tall gray spire of the dungeon shot up into the sky. The top of it had a flat roof with crenellations all around. The lights of the tower were unlit, revealing to us that this dungeon had not been taken yet. Since the gray stones of the dungeon had been in view, we have had our guard up. The empty plains of tall grass were high enough for anything to hide in. The sun started to set on the third day of the trek towards the tower, so we decided to set camp for the night. Our party of 10 consisted of 3 swordsmen, a wizard, 2 clerics, a bard, 2 of our most skilled knights, and a rogue. We had no idea what to expect, so we decided to make the team fairly heavy on the frontliners. We had enough supplies for 2 more weeks, plus emergency food that our wizard could conjure up. We were all on foot, so there wasn't much storage space for anything. The party pulled off into the tall grass and took a moment to place down their bedrolls and pitch tents. The watches came and went, and as the sun started to peek over the horizon, my companions began to rouse from their slumber, as I strummed my lute gently, singing a soft elven song that I had learned in my travels. We had been very excited since the tower came into view, and since we saw that none of our lights were on inside. The only thing that concerned Qualm, our red-skinned tiefling wizard, was that the beast that guards the tower had not been seen yet. Qualm had his books out this morning and was searching through them relentlessly. I just don't get why Sora can't do a little research beforehand, just so that we have a little bit of information. Oh, I understand that completely. If I knew what we were facing, I would know what to prepare for. Qualm looked at me, a fairly confused look on his face. Eventually he looked back at his books and continued his relentless studying. Eventually we took down camp and walked towards the tower. It was then, when we came around the side, we saw the large wooden doors of the spire looming over us. All of the party looked towards Celia, our rogue, and she rolled her eyes and walked towards the door. She was a tan human that was almost as tall as I was. Her gray cloak hung over one shoulder, but she quickly pulled it off and tied it tight around her. She ran her fingers over and around the door and put her ear up to it and started knocking. It appears to be barred from the inside, but I believe I can get it open with no problems. She took out of her pack a long crowbar and then shoved it right into the crack between the 2 halves of the door. The wood creaked and groaned, and as suddenly as anything, it sent splinters flying outward. I quickly ducked into the grass with only a few of the splinters piercing my skin. Qualm reached out of his hand and a golden shield appeared in front of him, deflecting the shards of wood flying at him. The rest of the party just had their shields to hide behind, like cowards. The door started laughing, and a bunch of eyes opened up on it. But Qualm flew into action. He pulled from his component pouch on his hip a chip of mica, crushed it in his hand, and held them out, creating a wretched screech from the mimic, and this sickening crunching noise. The wood started to crack and splinter, but the mimic threw forward its pseudopods. The rogue nimbly dodged both tendrils and quickly hid in the brush. Our knights moved forwards with their greatswords, and both started slashing at it, cutting at the mimic's mouth and eyes. I watched them hack and slash, and decided that I might get involved, and pulled my lute off my back and focused for a second. I started playing my lute and felt the incantations I was singing lock onto the door, and it seized up, unmoving. Its eyes looked around, confused. Our fighters saw this and took the chance to wail away at it. They completely demolished it, their swords and axes chipping away slowly at this mimic until it was nothing but splinters. After it had fallen, we all got up and got our bearings. The rogue came out of hiding and grabbed the crowbar harshly and said, "Maybe next time we should see if it's magical," and then glared at Qualm, who promptly shrugged. We all stepped forward to the entryway and looked down the massive corridor in front of us. The floor was made from smooth green-gray bricks, and the towering walls made from the same. But every 10 feet there were sconces with unlit torches inside of them. The sconces were a dark steel, plainly decorated, nothing too fancy, but a rose pattern all over it. Qualm took the initiative and stepped ahead of us, walking down the corridor. Everyone snapped out of the trance that they had been in, and hurriedly walked forwards, catching up with him. The knights took post on either side of him, our fighters behind that, and I and the rogue took the back. The darkness of the corridor engulfed us as we trudged onward. The light of the open door slowly turned to black, but I had no doubt that Qualm could see where he was going. The darkness continued, and I kept following the sound of footsteps in front of me, until they all had vanished. That is the end of this week's story, and with that, the second reading of this. Thank you all for viewing. Next week, it's going to be probably about the same time. There will be another story set in this world, but don't worry if you miss this week, or next week, or any of the weeks. All the stories are different, and they are not really too connected, just in the same world, and they'll all affect each other, but other than that, you shouldn't miss out on too much. And if you want, the links to the videos will be on our Discord. And I think that's about it. If you have any stories, feel free to share them. Without stories from the audience, this will never pick up and keep going. I call it the collaboration corner because everyone should collaborate. I want this to be a chance for artists to get their stories out and maybe feel a little braver about sharing their stories with others. I've always been a fond advocate of helping the little guy. So thank you all for watching, and I'll leave the art up. If you have any questions about the people in it. I have them tagged on there. Most of these are just from close friends, but I'm hoping that soon people will start submitting their artwork because I love art, music, drawing such as these. So, feel free to share. Everything, all the links and stuff are either in the description or the Discord, which you should be able to find. So, thank you all for watching, and we'll continue this next week.